You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, People Centric Leaders, it's Stephanie Anderson, and we're excited to be back for another episode of the People Centric Podcast with you today. On our podcast today, we've got Matt Griswold and Bethany Taff. Matt and Bethany, say hi.
Hey.
Hi. This one's
Hi.
Matt. This one's Matt.
This one's Bethany.
Good. Glad we cleared that up. But hey, we're jumping on today, and I brought this topic to our team because I've had several people in my life reach out to me about this lately. So if you're one of my friends listening to this might be a story about you, but don't worry, it's pretty nice. But I've had a couple of people in my life reach out to me lately asking how to give feedback to their boss. So to kind of give some context for where this is coming from, a couple different things. Had one friend come to me, and she's got a person on her team who is creating a lot of drama. She's stirring the pot among the team, is getting a lot of the boss's time and attention because she demands it. The rest of the team is feeling pretty neglected, and they can kind of recognize that this coworker is trending toward toxic, and it's making all of them feel like they don't want to be as engaged. And so she was upset about this and said, like, okay, like, I've got to talk to my boss. Like, I want to be here. I love my job. I don't want to be disengaged, but how he's handling this situation and how this employee is being allowed to act is really hurting the team. It's hurting me. And then had another friend say, well, we've got this one person on our team that everybody knows they are an underperformer. They're a low performer. They suck at their job. They ask questions in meetings that just leave our jaws on the floor of like, you've been selling that product for 2 years and you didn't know the answer to that question. So how does the boss really realize that they're not great at their job? Should I go and talk to them? And then another friend saying, hey, like, my boss kind of has a tendency to like jump in the middle of things in all of our work. And they've given me permission in the past to give them feedback when that happens. And I feel like I've done that and I've given that boundary, and now it's happening again and again and again. And so do I keep going to them and telling them like, hey, I need you to get out of my way? So just a couple, again, stories that have come my way recently of people feeling like, okay, I want to talk about this with my boss or my leader, but I'm not sure how. And I will say, just to kind of tee this up, I think everybody pretty much knows why they shouldn't just go and complain about it, but maybe we can start there. Like, they kind of know what the wrong approach is, but not what the right approach is. And how do I actually give feedback up in the organization, especially if something doesn't feel like it's going well? So, Matt, Bethany, have you guys ever encountered this before?
Absolutely. And I think the easiest thing to do is to just fire your boss. I think that's the easiest thing to do. Fire your boss.
Oh, that'll
And I
do
think
it.
yeah, that'll do it. That works every time. They'll resist at first, but you can wear them down. I mean, we hear this a lot, right? We hear this a lot from people who are like, man, if my boss would just, I can't believe they're not doing this. I can't believe they're not doing that. I think here's some foundational things that I've learned over the years. One, they're probably doing more than what you know, and you're probably not privy to all those conversations, nor should you be, right? There might be some other things maybe in the background that maybe there's somebody that needs to have a difficult conversation and everybody knows it, and you're pretty sure the boss isn't doing their job. But you're not going to know if they have the difficult conversation or where that is in that process. Maybe there's a process that you think needs improved. And depending on the size of your organization, you might not have any idea that there's a whole other department working on that thing. It might not even, if I come from corporate America, I come from large company, and even though they're the boss, they're the manager, like they answered to 15 other people that were ahead of them in line too, right? And so sometimes your bosses are doing the best they can. Okay. Having said that, we also lead another topic called difficult conversations, or we actually renamed that to the art of conflict. The art of conflict, because people struggle having difficult conversations. And it's an interesting concept, this idea of difficult conversations, because the entire time we're going through that PowerPoint, maybe 3/4 of the way through, we throw them a curveball, because I think everybody is thinking about the art of conflict, difficult conversations, as I'm the manager having a difficult conversation to my employee or with my employee. Typically, when you hear about difficult conversations, that's the dynamic, right? I'm the manager, I'm the boss, I'm higher, you're lower, I'm cool, you're not, however you want to say it, right? I'm here, you're there. This is me having the conversation with you. However, there's different dynamics involved whenever maybe the employee needs to have a difficult conversation with the boss, or maybe peer to peer at the same time. Nobody's the boss of anybody, but we need to have a difficult conversation. So just understanding the different dynamics involved, I think, is maybe lesson number one. The thing that I would say, and I'll turn it over to somebody else if they'd like to chime in on that thought there. But the thing that I would say, and that I challenge managers all the time with, is as a leader of people, as a manager of people, are you doing a good job of creating an environment where people feel comfortable to come bring you stuff? Right? To come bring you stuff. Because maybe you're listening to this podcast and you're going, absolutely not, right? I have the manager title. That's why I'm in the role, because I'm really smart. I have a lot of knowledge. I've been doing this a long time. There's a reason I'm the boss and you're not. And I think you're probably doing it wrong if that's your stance. If I'm a manager of people, man, I hope I'm creating an environment where people come to me safely and respectfully share their grievances. It does not mean you have to do all the things, but you do certainly need to probably create an environment that where people feel comfortable bringing you those things. So I don't even know if I answered your question, but I think all of that was relevant and really good for the conversation.
Yeah, it was great. Yes. Yeah. I kind of want to pull you back to where you started with that, Matt, of like talking about sometimes as an employee, we don't have all the information, because I'll say, like, talking through those different situations with these people in my life, one of them definitely was like, oh no, I know they haven't talked about this. I know she's not been given this feedback. And so I think, just recognizing, like, you might to a certain extent know a couple things, but it just harkens back to like one of our people centric truths is, effective communication can only happen if you're willing to admit you might be wrong. So I think that's like a good starting point. If you're an employee going to have that conversation with your manager, you feel like you need to give your boss some feedback or some insight into what's happening in your role or what's happening with the team, is if you go in knowing you are right, which would mean that your boss is wrong, you're not going to have an effective conversation there. I think you've got to be open to hearing the feedback back from your boss. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make in feedback conversations, is they assume it's going to be like one directional, of like one-sided. It's like, I'm going to say what I came here to say and what I need to say, and then we're just going to talk about that. And they're not going to give me any feedback. There's not going to be like this feedback that comes from both directions. And so I think if you go in knowing you're right, then that means your boss can't give you any feedback or maybe help you see what your role in that is, or how you're performing in your position, or how your interactions are impacting the team. And I think that is honestly a tough pill to swallow, because I think a lot of times, everybody wants to do a really good job. I don't know a single person on the planet who doesn't want to do a great job. But sometimes when we see someone else who's doing a bad job, it makes it hard for us to admit maybe where we aren't perfect either. So I'm glad that you kind of started there, Matt, of like, you probably don't know everything that's happening. So yeah, you got to approach this conversation with a certain level of humility to say, yes, I am observing something that's not going well, but maybe I'm assuming a lot here and I don't have all the facts.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that I really couldn't stand at the time growing up, that my mom would say. And now I find myself saying it to my own kids and to other people. But whenever I would say, you're always this, or
Mhm.
that always happens, or you never say yes, or that type of thing. Sometimes as employees, we get caught into that too, right? Our boss never does this, or they always let it slide, right? Or, whatever that might be. And my mom, whenever I would use words like that, sometimes we live in absolutes and maybe we shouldn't live in absolutes, right? Maybe there's a little grace there too. But my mom would always say, I said always, my mom would say, always is a long time. She'd look
Mhm.
at me, always is a long time. Never is a long time. And that frustrated me. But as I've grown, I've learned that, you know what? Very, very few things are always. Very, very, very few things are never. There's typically another side to what that story might be. And when we're talking to people, and we're kind of listening to employees air grievances, we realize we're getting one side of that story. And we want to assume the best, kind of like you said, Stephanie, of other people at the same time. So just remember that always is a long time. Is it really always? Probably not.
I like that. Yeah, you guys touched on so many things. I was like, I have so many thoughts. I don't know which direction to go with this, but I think that like, yes, I've totally been there and also have observed other people in these situations too that are like, what do I do? Because I don't want to become like the tattletale, on the team. And like, I don't want to get in trouble or I don't know, like it's annoying because it impacts me, but is it really my business to handle? And it's kind of like, well, yes. Yeah, all of that. I get it. Like all of that, yes. I think it's yes, hopefully you have a boss like you guys were talking about who is open to feedback. But if you don't like or you think you don't, I think it's still appropriate at times to come to your boss and say, well, how you guys are talking, but to kind of come and say, like, here's what I'm observing. This is what I'm observing. Can you help me understand what's going on in this situation? And maybe even I think like in my perspective, or how I've even like recommended to other people to have those conversations with their boss to sort of say like, you probably already have this under control, and to kind of go back to the like humility or not knowing everything, but giving your boss the benefit of the doubt and say, you are probably already on top of this. You've probably already had the conversations. You are the boss. Just reiterating that. Here's what I'm observing. I just want to bring this to you in case it's helpful. But I think it might also be good to say, I'm not going to bring this up again. Just so you know, I'm not going to bring it up again unless you have questions and you need more information from me at another time, then, whatever. But this is what I'm going to bring up, and then I'm going to leave it before you and trust that you're handling it. And I think that that's
And you
all
can either pass or fail because
it's
I'm
you.
judging every move after this. You can either
I'm
do the
just
right thing or the wrong thing, and
It's
everybody's
really
watching.
a veiled challenge. That's what it is.
Well, and as you were saying that, Bethany, and then Matt, you did it so funnily of like, yeah, like don't go and make demands of your boss. Cause I think, and this is actually what I told one of my friends, if you're at that point where you feel like you're marching into this meeting
Yeah,
to make demands of them, then I think maybe you just need to quit your boss, right? Like Matt was saying earlier, which means like I think maybe you need to realize you're not aligned
yeah.
and think about that of like, do I even want to be aligned, or should I maybe start looking for something else and find somewhere where, I really can give that and have that engagement. But I think where it is hard is because I don't think it's very often where we like choose a job going in knowing like, oh, I don't like what's going on. Like usually
Mhm.
we're pretty excited going into a new role and we are engaged and we want to be engaged in our role. But then when it starts feeling like things are starting to happen that make us feel like we are starting to disengage, like I no longer feel all in, I no longer feel like I can give all of my trust to the situation, no longer feel like maybe there's my best interest or other people's best interests at heart. Or, I mean, sometimes it is hard. Sometimes adults don't play by the rules and we aren't kind to each other and we see things happen that we don't like on a team or in an organization. And so I think it is also going into that and really thinking about what do you want the outcome to be of this conversation. So I like how you approach that, Bethany, of just saying like, hey, if your intent is really to make things better and to be helpful, then you're going to your boss and you are asking for help. How can I help make this better? Is there something that I can do? Or even saying to your boss, like, hey, like, I think I need your help. Like, if this is what we want the culture of our team to be, and this is where we're headed, like, I want to know, like, how can I make sure I'm staying aligned with you to have this culture on our team? But again, I think if you're going into it with demands for your boss, then I think you have to decide, like, are you willing to die on that hill or not? Because you may or may not get the answer that you want from them, depending on what the situation is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that where I've seen it go south for people is whenever it's like, maybe they really did see something on their team that was like, this is not great. Like whether that's an employee or like, I don't think how this thing was handled. I don't like that. Or it wasn't good, but it's like when it's like that tattletale mentality where it's like they are in their manager's office like every week and they're just like complaining about it and they're telling on people and they're like doing this stuff and it's just like that's the worst. Don't do that. That's not going to get you where you hope it will. It's probably going to backfire on you. And so I think you have to do it really tactfully and then trust your leader to make those decisions and you'll get that clarity there too. And then to kind of like add to what you were saying a minute ago, Stephanie, too, is like asking for like, what can I do to help? And I think that so if you really don't know, go ask that question, definitely. And even before that too, you probably like, what have you done? Check in with yourself too and say, what have I done to try to help support this person on my team or this situation on my team? And how like, can I go and say like, hey, can I help you with this? Or, hey, I saw this thing kind of play out like this. Can I, and just trying to jump in and support the team as you see it versus sort of just standing back and being like, whoa, that was horrible. I think there's a recognition of your role. Like, no, if you have a coworker who you're not their boss, so like you can't go tell them what to do, but you can be a team. You can be a teammate. You can say, hey, what can I do to help support this person or this client or this whatever? And so take that route first, I think, if you can. And then if it's like, I don't know the right path to help in this situation, then I think it's like, go ask that question.
Yeah. And I think sometimes why this can be hard is because it's not always work stuff, right? And here's what I mean by that is like sometimes how we interact with people that we work with isn't always related to the work that we do. And I'm bringing this up because just thinking through one of the stories that was told to me recently, some of the drama on the team is not happening like in a meeting or something. It's happening even like on social media or after work hours, or there's texts and people are being included and excluded or different things are happening. And so I think one piece there that I encourage my friend to think about of like, hey, like, yeah, this person it does sound like they are creating a lot of drama. It doesn't sound like they're handling things well. So in that lane, you might be right? That like this person is not acting very professionally. But also like own your part in it of like, where do you need to have some boundaries maybe in workplace friendships and relationships? And I know we've done whole episodes on workplace friendships before. And sometimes we talk a lot about, manager and employee relationships, but sometimes it's even with a coworker of like, hey, maybe we do need to professionalize this a little bit because some of the interpersonal stuff is bleeding into our everyday work. Maybe I just need to go and have a conversation with that person versus going to my boss to talk about that person. And so I think that's another like gut check too before you take it to your leader is like, okay, let me really think about this situation and what's happening. And do I actually like, am I going to the right person to have this conversation? Do I just need to maybe go to my coworker and just tell them like, hey, like, how you handle like what you said or how you handled that the other day just really like hurt my feelings, or it's really been bugging me. And can we talk through that and like figure out a way to do this differently the next time? Because I don't like how the way I'm feeling right now. I'm sure it didn't feel great to you either. Could we just talk about this and maybe just have um a respectful conversation in that space about like the drama, right? Because sometimes it is. It's more between you and that person. It's not necessarily your boss's role to make sure everyone on the team is like best friends, right? Like your boss is responsible for maintaining the culture of the team. So if we're consistently not seeing our values be upheld, I think that's a conversation point maybe with the boss, just to say like, hey, like I think our culture is not feeling great to me right now. And how can I help make that better and take some ownership in that? But a lot of times, like it isn't necessarily your boss's responsibility to make sure everybody is besties on the team. So maybe let's talk about that a little bit, because I think I hear that too. And sometimes people are like, well, so and so doesn't get along with so and so, or like this person or like that person. And so we don't want to work together. And that's the kind of stuff that gets brought to the boss, is like people don't like each other, not like, hey, there's this issue in a process, or hey, I do think maybe there's a real cultural, broad reaching issue. It's more just like, we're just kind of not getting along. We're not vibing.
We've said this several times in other podcasts, and I know I've said it from the stage as well, but you can be toxic and correct at the same time. And what I mean by that is we've kind of gone through a list of things that, okay, so I can bring my grievance respectfully, but at the end of the day, the manager is the manager, the employee is the employee, and everybody has a decision to make, right? Everybody has choices. Everybody has a decision to make. The manager can choose to act on the thing that you brought, whatever it is, or they could choose not to act on the thing that you brought. You may never know that they did. You may never know why they didn't. All of those things, right? And we have a tendency, I think, as people, as employees, to, if we don't see the thing that we thought we were going to see, or if we don't see the change that we thought we were going to see, then we have a tendency to get a little saucy, right? A little bitter, a little, I don't know, I was trying to think of another word. I don't know what the kids are saying these days, but I was going to, one of those, get a little frustrated.
I think the kids aren't saying saucy, but
okay. Well,
I like saucy.
Yeah, get a little disturbed, right? And anyway, you have a tendency to do that, and you go back to your desk and your workspace or whatever, and you're waiting for the thing that you asked for to happen, and it's not happening. Then you have a tendency to get a little bit frustrated, and because I get frustrated, I have a tendency to act out or shut down, whichever direction you're going to go. What I'm saying is everybody has choices. You can air your grievance, you can make your case. But at the end of the day, the manager is the manager, the employee is the employee. You get to decide whether or not you would like to continue to work there or not. I could think of an organization. I won't say the name of it. I could think of an organization that we have worked with for several years. Actually, no longer work with them, but worked with them for several years. And several employees were frustrated at the owner. Talk about a dynamic there. And we did facilitate some of those conversations of trying to create change with some of the things. However, the owner is the owner, right? The owner is the one that writes your check. The owner is the one that pays you to be there. The owner is the one that gets to dictate how things kind of operate. Now, we're not condoning necessarily that all of that behavior. Did the owner do everything correctly? No, absolutely not. However, the owner was the owner. And so, the conversation changed from, okay, let's figure out how to file these grievances. Let's figure out how to structure this in a respectful way. They changed from that to, listen, like, we kind of know what's what now. Everybody has played their cards. Everybody has shown what hand they have. And now people get to decide and make choices from that. Do I want to continue to do this and maybe be frustrated? Do I want to make a change and get over it and be positive again? And like, it is what it is, and I'm going to deal with it. Or do I want to go find a different opportunity where I think that other thing, this is how it should be. And maybe you can go find that somewhere else, right? Everybody has a decision to make. Everybody has choices to make. That's true for the employee. It's also true for the leadership that works for the organization too. And it's kind of liberating to recognize that. We get frustrated because we think this is what they're not doing what I need them to do. Their job is not to do what it is that you think that they need to do, right? They have a bigger picture in mind of what this looks like. I was with a group yesterday and they were talking about the view of the president of the organization getting caught in the weeds, not caught in the weeds in particular. And they thought maybe they should be more hands-on with that stuff. And we had to have a conversation of like, look, if I'm the president of the organization, I'm not just looking at that one thing you're bringing to me. I'm looking at, man, that thing spider webs into 6 different directions, right? If we do this, then there's lots of other things I have to consider as you get to walk back to your office and just go about your job because the one thing that bothered you got shifted, right? And it doesn't always work that way. And maybe I'm over dramatizing that, but I think that's also something important to consider. At the end of the day, everybody has choices and everybody has to make the right choice for them. That's it.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think it's, we all only live in our own heads, right? And so if something happens that bothers us, sometimes it is easy to forget that like you're probably not the only person that your manager is managing. You're probably not the only responsibility that they have. And listen, I'm gonna relate because I know there are people who are listening to this and probably like a little frustrated with some of the advice that we're giving. If you are listening to this because you want to give feedback to your boss, you're like, okay, but like I am right and they are a horrible manager and they are this or that. And it's like, yeah, you could absolutely be right. They could be the worst manager on planet Earth. But that's where again we have to like all of us one-on-one think like, okay, well, then if they are the worst manager on planet Earth, do I want to keep working here? Or do I want to try to find something else or find different ways? Or, maybe it is just like maybe I don't have the full picture, or maybe maybe there are things happening that I don't understand. Or maybe honestly, like maybe my manager is struggling. Maybe there is somebody on the team that is really hard for my manager to manage, and I'm just kind of seeing that, right? And that doesn't mean that everything is awful and they're the worst leader in the whole world, but maybe there is some like difficult situations. And I think sometimes it's just as acknowledging too that like sometimes things are hard, right? And sometimes we don't easily solve stuff because it's hard stuff to solve, or they're challenging or complex problems. We all are really complex people, and maybe the manager is trying to manage someone differently than us because of something that's going on with that person or that person's specific needs that are different than ours. And so I think that's the other thing that we hear too is like, we'll hear employees be like, well, the manager shouldn't even be doing that. They should be treating everyone exactly the same. And I'm just personally going to really disagree with that. I think your manager should be treating everyone fairly, but a great manager should be looking at each employee's strengths, their opportunities to grow, maybe what they know about them and their likes and dislike, or what's happening in their personal life outside of work. And they probably are managing that person differently than they're managing you. That doesn't mean that that's the wrong approach, right? I think a great manager, we call like plays chess, not checkers, and they know that each of the playing pieces on the board, if you know anything about chess versus checkers, that every chess piece can move different ways and has different strengths, and so you play them differently. And so I think sometimes it's just maybe recognizing, oh, maybe I'm observing that. Maybe my manager does know that that person on the team is performing really at a low level right now, and I'm seeing them spend a lot of time with that person. And listen, that is kind of frustrating because if you're the top performer, you're like, ugh, my boss is spending all their time with this person who sucks, right? But maybe that's the right thing for your manager to be doing right now. Like maybe that person, and maybe there's things that we don't know or we don't see or we don't understand about the business or the company or where we're at right now, that maybe that's the right thing is to like spend some more time with that person. Because what if we could get that person to high performance and to a great level, or maybe they are in the process of giving that person feedback that they're not able to share with you, or they shouldn't be sharing with you, right? In that healthy relationship with your manager. So, I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, frankly, but I just think that sometimes we hear people say that of just everyone should get the exact same treatment from the manager. And I think it's no, maybe your manager is playing some chess here and trying to figure it out. Or maybe your manager does suck and they're not a good leader, not a good boss. And then you do have to come to a point of deciding, if I am recognizing in this moment that I am not aligned, right? I disagree with the things that are happening here. That makes me upset. Well, the reality is, like, that may not change. And so you kind of have to decide, like, can I figure out a way to work within this? Or do I maybe need to realize that I'm not a good fit here for where they're trying to go? And again, you could be right. But sometimes it's just acknowledging that and saying, like, oh yeah, maybe I need to start putting some feelers out for something else if this feels like it's happening all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are all really good points. I was thinking, and I know we're wrap up here soon, but I also was just thinking, like, I think whenever you do approach your manager too, whether that's even, because sometimes it's not about a person, sometimes it's about a thing, right? And so figuring out how do I give my boss feedback in a way that they don't feel threatened by what I'm saying to them. And I think a really practical way to do that too is to also just focus on like what that problem is and not the boss specifically, to say, I don't like the way that you're doing this. I don't think you're handling this situation. I think, this, however this is being done sucks. I think it's just like, hey, here's an opportunity that I see for our team that we could do better. Here's where I feel like we're falling short, and here's where I think it could go. And being able to really focus on the problem and not pointing fingers at your boss. And I think that if you do that and just kind of pull the emotions out of it a little bit, or the finger pointing and the blame, then that's just another good tip that I've found to actually try to solve the problem that you're trying to solve too. So
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, Bethany, because it's the difference between culture of blame and culture of accountability that we'll talk a lot about with our clients of, you know, blame focuses on the person, accountability focuses on the problem, right? And so, yeah, I think approaching it with like, hey, this is what's happening. How do we fix it? How do we make it better? Instead of coming in and just blaming everything on one person. And that person could be somebody on your team, or it could be your boss or manager or a boss above them. There's not a lot we can do when there's blame, right? Except for just get rid of people. And so if people are the problem, then the only way to solve it is to get rid of everybody else. But that's not a solution, right? So we have to focus on what actually the problem is, because that's true accountability. And then we can actually make it better. We can work better together, and we can understand where there's strengths and weaknesses on our team.
yeah, definitely.
Well, I hope if you're listening to this today and you're an employee and you've been thinking about maybe how do I bring this up to my boss, that this has been helpful. But if there's something that we missed or didn't tap on, reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk with you about that. Or if you are listening to this and you are the boss or a manager, I hope this maybe gave you some insight maybe into how you can also help your employees be successful in these conversations of when they bring something to you. Maybe questions you can ask to try to get to the root of why they're concerned, maybe why they're bringing this up to you. Would just encourage you to be curious when an employee brings this, because I know, like, it can be annoying sometimes and it feels like you become the principal's office. So how do you redirect people and get them back focused, have healthy accountability on your team? But that's also something we'd be happy to talk with you about if you want to reach out. But thanks, Matt and Bethany, for your insights on this topic and talking through it. Any closing thoughts for today?
No, glad to be here.
No, yeah, I think I said everything I was going to say about the topic. It was pretty good. Pretty good.
Good. Well, all the info for how to get a hold of us is in our outro. And I know we say this a lot, but we do really love to hear from you guys. And if you have a topic that you'd like for us to discuss or tackle, please send it our way. But until next time, we'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and